Okay, what are you saying, people, and welcome back to another weekly Forex analysis. Now, before we get into this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button and also leave a like. That's all appreciated. I'll be doing this weekly Forex analysis every week, so you don't want to be missing out on that. And also follow me on my Telegram channel. I'll leave a link to that in the description. So I'll be posting a lot of different trading setups throughout the week, and you don't want to miss out on that. But like I said, we've got another weekly Forex analysis. So let me stop talking and let's get into it. Okay, so up first we've got Euro USD. Okay, so for Euro USD on the daily chart, you can clearly see what a push to the upside on the daily chart there, clear bull run, and now we've found some resistance here as price is starting to push and create those higher highs. We've got this support level here as well, which is essentially keeping price trapped between these two levels. We've got our support level there and our resistance level there. So we're waiting for price to give us a bit more clear direction from a daily point of view, whether we're going to break this resistance level and look to push on higher, or break the support level and give us a swing to the downside as we look for some retrace in this big push to the upside we've just had. From a long-term point of view, so from the weekly, we expect a swing to the downside just because we had this long push to the upside. So you do expect some retrace as price looks to go and find some support in the market, and we could potentially see a longer move to go and test this area in the market here. As you can see, it was acting as resistance for us here, move to the downside, resistance again, push to the downside, a load of wicks there as price was struggling to break through this level. So again, once you break that area, you expect it to act as support. So if we were to get a swing to the downside, we could potentially be looking at price eventually getting to this level here, where we could be looking for price to continue in the uptrend if it wishes to do so. But first, obviously, we need to see price give us that bearish indication there, either breaking through these levels on the daily chart, or potentially going back to retest this level up here for our resistance and give us a nice bearish price action there on the lower charts like the 4H or the hourly. So for USD, we'll be looking for the shorts because we're just expecting that swing to the downside on the higher time frames. So if we get another push to the upside to go potentially test that resistance again, we'll be looking for shorting opportunities there on the 4H and the low time frames. Or if we see a break of this daily support, you can wait for the retest and again look for some shorting opportunities there. Next, we're going to take a look at USD JPY. Okay, so for USD JPY on the daily chart, you can clearly see we're still moving sideways. We've got our resistance up here and we've got our support of the market down here. Essentially moving sideways, we need a bit more direction in the market. We do have this trend line going through the daily chart here with three clear tests of the trend line. Got a test here, test there, and test there again. So potentially could be seeing price continue moving sideways until eventually we get that test of the trend line, and then potentially you can see price continue to the downside, where we can go see potentially get price go and test our weekly level down here again before we look to break the trend line. And of course, if we do look to break the trend line, we can see price continue a lot higher and give us a move to the upside, and potentially go and test our weekly trend line, which we got running through the market like so. So potentially you can get a move to go and test the weekly trend line up there, but of course we need to get through the daily trend line first and potentially see that break of that trend line to go get us to test that weekly. But with USD JPY currently, we're just moving sideways. We've got our two levels there between the market, between the resistance and the support. So essentially, if you get a move to go and test the resistance, potentially looking for shorts on the lower time frames, and again, if you get a move to the support there, you can look for some moves on the daily time frames again. But so far, no real clear movement for USD JPY. Going to wait for a little bit more development with this pair, and on the weekly there again as well. Not too much going on, but again, we could be coming to get a test of that daily trend line, where we could be looking for shorts in the market if we do get that fourth test. Now let's move on to USD CAD. Okay, so for USD CAD on the daily chart, we recently had a break of our channel. That price has been respecting for quite some time. As you can see me drawing it in now, price was respecting for a number of days, and finally we had a break of that channel to the upside, and quite an impulsive one, and it looks like price is finding some support in the market as it retraces, and before we can expect price to continue to the upside. And again, we came up to a weekly area in the market where we do expect that area to act as support for us. And as you can see me drawing in the level now, it acted as support very well in the past. Again, support there, push the upside, again support, big push to the upside. So again, you expect that area to act as support for us. And as you can see, we've got that engulfing candle on the weekly as well. So we've had a bullish reaction from hitting that support. And we also closed above the 200 moving average as well on the weekly. So you could probably be seeing a push to the upside continue further from a weekly point of view and from a daily point of view. And we can expect a nice little swing potentially going on. Of course, if we don't fall back down and go break through that weekly support. But for now, we've had a bullish reaction and we do expect that to continue to the upside. From a weekly point of view, we can expect price to potentially go and test this area in the market here. As you can see, it was our previous support in the market, push the downside, push back up, and finally we had a break through it. So we can expect price to go and essentially go test that area again before we either see price continue back to the downside or of course go break it and continue higher. But that's where we're expecting price to continue to from a weekly point of view, and we can potentially be seeing that continue. So for entries, you can just wait for pullbacks on the lower time frames, the hourly and the 4 hourly, to capitalize on a move to the upside and potentially go and test this level up there. But that is where we're expecting USD CAD to go through for the next couple of weeks. Now let's move on to Euro GBP. Okay, so for Euro GBP on the daily chart, you can see we had a big push to the upside this week. Price came to this level in the market and we're expecting a bullish reaction. So I was talking about price having to move to the downside, and I was pointing out this level last week, how we acted at resistance quite well in the past. You can see reaction here to the downside, again another test to the downside, and then you can see it acting as support for us, again another push to the upside. So when price came back to this area, you expect it to act as support, and you can see that we had a big reaction and price continued move to the upside. And we can obviously see we've taken up some daily resistance. Here was our previous daily resistance, and you can see we just shot right through it. So you can potentially see price start to have a bit of retrace. As you can see, consecutive bull candles there, no retrace in this move yet. So you can potentially see price start to fall back off and go potentially test this area again before price can continue in that bullish move in the market. But we expect price to go at least test this area in the market here, which was our previous daily resistance. So again, you expect that to act as daily support for us again. And if we go to the higher time frames like the weekly, you can see very bullish candle breaking through that area in the market, and we are coming up to this area up here where we could potentially be seeing another reaction to the downside. And if I zoom out a little bit more, so as a result, you do expect some bearishness to creep into the market from this significant level. And this is the weekly chart, and you can see how well it's acting as resistance for us in the past. Test here, move to the downside, another test, move to the downside, and again test, big move to the downside, another test, move to the downside. So we're coming up to this area in the market, so you do expect some bearishness to creep in back into the market from the higher time frames like the monthly and the weekly. So if we do get a break of this daily level here, potentially see price continue a lot further. But again, we do have a daily support there, so it could be a scenario where prices come back to test the daily support, move back to the upside to go and test our weekly resistance, and then we get a bigger move to the downside. But because of the bullishness of this week, we could be seeing price continue a little bit higher first before we see a bigger reversal to the downside. Okay, so up next we've got AUD USD. Okay, so for AUD on the daily chart, you can still see we're in an uptrend in the market, but we're still expecting a swing to the downside to come into this market soon. As you can see from the higher time frames like the weekly chart, big move to the upside, expecting some retrace now in the market, and the monthly as well. As you can see, 5 consecutive bull candles to the upside there. So you are expecting price to go and have a pullback at least to go find some support before it continues in that bullish trend. So again, we've got this very strong level on the weekly chart here, which was our previous resistance in the market. As you can see, acting as resistance for us there quite well in the past. Big move to the downside from that area, and again acting as resistance for us again. So you can see we've broken through this level, so you expect it to act as for support for us for price now. So if we get another move to the downside, we can be expecting this area in the market to act as support for us and potentially look for price to either continue that upwards trend or look to fall back down further. But that's where we're expecting a swing to the downside to get to for AUD USD. And the daily chart, you can still see we're still moving in that upwards trend. We do have this trend line on the daily chart, which again we need to see a break of to get that swing to really kick in on the daily chart to the downside to go and test our weekly level there. But again, it could be a scenario where we go and look to break it in the early stages of next week, and then you can looking for some pullbacks as price continues to the downside. Or it could be a scenario where we have another push to the upside and go and test our recent highs up there, where we can be looking for some shorting opportunities on the lower time frames and look to capitalize on a longer swing to the downside. So that's what we're expecting for AUD/USD. Of course, this could still push higher, and that's the case. We'll see a break of that high there, and you can look for some retests to capitalize on the move to the upside. But our bias is still to the downside as price looks to have a retrace in the market and go find some support on the higher time frames. So that's what we're expecting for AUD/USD, and you can be looking for some entries as price gives us some pullbacks, or if we get another move to the upside to go and test our recent highs. Let's take a look at NZD CAD. Okay, so for NZD CAD on the daily chart, you can see that we've had not too much going on lately. We've got a clear support level here and a clear resistance level here that price is kind of stuck between. So it could be a scenario where we have a break of the support level and we see price continue lower, and we can potentially see price come back to the same area where we had the initial push from. Or if we see price break the resistance level, we could potentially see price climb higher and go and test the previous highs we had in the market. On the weekly chart, again, you can see that we had NZD CAD fall to the downside quite strongly, and then we had that week where we had that push to the upside from this level here. As you can see, it was previous resistance for us there in the market. Then you can see at the support again, big push to the upside. So it could be a case where we had a push, a retrace, and price continue back to the upside. And if that's the case, we could potentially see price come back, test the highs again on the weekly chart. But again, you can see on the weekly there two candles there, not too much going on in the market. Small body candles there. On the daily chart again, not too much, essentially just moving sideways now. So it could be a case where we have a break to the upside. You can look to go long when we have a retest again and capitalize on the move to the upside. Or if we get a break of this level, again, wait for the retest and can look to go along there on the lower time frames, and then potentially see price come back to retest this daily support level down there. Up next, we've got GBP NZD. Okay, so for GBP NZD on the daily chart, you can see that we've had a big move to the downside. Last week I was speaking about this level here in the market, which we were at, and I was saying if we had this level hold, we could potentially see price continue to the upside and give us another swing to the upside. But if we broke, we could potentially see price come all the way back down and go and test the trend line again, or test these lows. And you can see we had a break of that same level, and price continue to have that move to the downside. And you can see we're back at that weekly trend line. So if I go on the weekly chart, you can see this trend line here has been respected for quite some time now. Got multiple tests there, test there again, recently a test there, and now we're having another test, and also got that 200 movement average there again. So there is some significance in this area of the market here. Got the trend line, got a previous support there, and got the 200 movement average. So potentially could be seeing price can have another reaction at this area of the market and have another push to the upside, but we are looking very bearish. And if we do get a break of this trend line, we'll potentially see price continue to the downside a lot further. Because if I do go to the monthly chart and I draw my trend line in, you can see that actually that this market is in a downwards trend, and you can see that this trend line that I've just drawn in the monthly chart has been respected for quite some time now. A lot of wicks trying to break through the trend line, but you can see by the month's end we've just closed back within that same trend line. So again, we recently had another test of that same trend line here. So it could be a case where we're having a test and we're going to continue in that downward trend from that monthly chart, and we could definitely be seeing that happen if we get a break of that trend line. Essentially, of course, we could have a false breakout, but if we get a break of that and price starting to continue to the downside, we could potentially see that monthly trend continue further and price continue to fall. but because we're at that area of value, we've got that support there, we've got the trend line there, and also the weekly 200 moving average. Potentially see price move to the upside a little bit as we start to get a retrace in this move at least, and see price move to the upside. So you can look to take advantage of that on the lower time frames, and then potentially look to get into some pullbacks if price decides to continue lower. Okay, so let's see what's happening with CAD JPY. Okay, so for CAD JPY on the daily chart, you can see that we finally had a move to the downside from this area in the market. You can see we had a big move prior to that from that same level, so we're expecting that same level to act as resistance, and you can see it held. Price was testing it multiple times, and then we had a move to the downside. So potentially we could see this move to the downside continue a little bit further. We do have this daily trend line here with 3 prior tests to it. We've got a test there, we've got a little bit of a false breakout there, price almost comes to test it there, and we had another test here. So we can potentially see price come back and fall back a little bit further and continue in that downwards move to go and test that trend line again at least before maybe having another move to the upside. If we could take a look on the higher time frames, we can see we're clearly in a downtrending market on the weekly here. We've got 3 tests of this trend line here, got a test there, a second test there, and a third test there. So it could be a case where we're coming back to go and test our daily trend line to squeeze up to go test the weekly and eventually have a break down to the downside and continue that weekly bearish market there. Because even if I zoom out, you can see we're in a downtrend market there, so we could be looking to go a little bit further. But from a daily point of view, we're expecting that to continue and potentially go and test our daily trend line here, and then we'll see where we will go from there in terms of price when we get to around this point. But again, we're expecting that to continue to the downside. We could have a scenario where we're coming back up, go retest that same daily resistance level, and that's the case, we can look for some short opportunities on the lower time frames, or we can potentially see price continue further and we look to get in on some pullbacks. But that's what we're expecting for CAD JPY. Okay, let's see what's happening with GBP USD. Okay, so for GBP USD on the daily chart, you can clearly see it had a big move to the downside from this level here in the market, and you can clearly see why. If I move it along and go to the weekly chart, you can see it was a strong level on the weekly time frame, and from this same level we had a big move to the downside to go and test all these lows down there. So again, you expect that area to hold and to have some bearish reaction in the market, and clearly you can see we had one there. And if I go to the daily chart, we're coming up to this level here, which was our previous resistance in the market, and if I move it along a little bit more, you can see it was our previous support as well. So price came into this level, reaction, pushed the upside, broke through it, back at that same level again, acting as resistance for us, moved to the downside, broke through it again, and we're back at that same level. So you expect it to act as support for us, and we also got that 200 moving average there nearby. So you could be seeing price have a push to the upside. As you can see, quite a bearish move, not really any pullbacks there in the market. So we could potentially see price creep back up higher as it gets a pullback in the market and a little bit of a retrace. We've got this level here that potential price could come to. As you can see, it was acting as support for us quite nicely there. So we could potentially see price creep up higher to go test that level before continuing in that downtrend. But we are expecting that downtrend to continue for GBP USD. And on the monthly chart, you can see we are in the downtrending market here. Price is definitely moving to the downside from a higher time frame point of view. And again, you can see that same level on the monthly chart of where we are. So we could potentially see price come back lower again and potentially go and test this level down here, which was our previous support on the monthly chart. But in terms of direction, we definitely expect this to continue. But for now, for entries, you could be looking for price to have some pullbacks and potentially looking to capitalize on some retrace here. But essentially, we're expecting GBPUSD to continue ultimately to the downside. And last but not least, GBP CAD. Okay, so for GBP CAD on the daily chart, you can clearly see a big push to the downside in the market there. Broke through this level in the market quite well. Almost no reaction there, and plummeted straight through that level. And you can see we had our weekly trend line drawn in here. I'll zoom out on the weekly chart, and you can see we've had many tests of the same trend line there. One there, multiple there, again there, again there. So you can clearly see price is respecting this trend line very well, and you respect it to hold since of the history of this trend line. And you can see we had a big push to the downside from that same area, and we could potentially see that continue a lot further. And we also, if we go to the monthly, we've got this monthly trend line here, which again, like the weekly one, respected quite well in the past here, multiple tests of the same trend line, and we could potentially see price continue further to go and test that trend line again before we see potentially another reaction to go back up in the market. But from the price action that's gone through here on the weekly chart and the daily chart, we're expecting that to continue, but for now on the daily chart, we're coming up to this over the market here, which again you can see act as support for us very well in the market here. Getting a test there, push to the upside, 2 tests there, double bottom, big push to the upside. So we'll come up to that same area where you do expect price to have a reaction to the upside, and we can see price potentially move to the upside to find some resistance and eventually continue in that downtrend and continue to the downside. But for now, we're coming up to that daily support, so you expect to see a reaction in the market. I potentially see price start to push to the upside, and you can look to capitalize that on the lower time frames like the 4H and the hourly as price moves up to have a pullback in the market. Then again, you can look to capitalize on some pullbacks when price starts to continue further to the downside. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the video. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure you hit the subscribe button and also leave a like. That's all appreciated. Comment down below if you disagree or if you agree with my analysis. But till the next one, I'll see you later.